So next up, we have a topic on cloud governance with infrastructure as code with Kyverno and Crossplane. And the speaker for that is Dolis. Dolis is a customer success engineer at Nirmata. They manage production Kubernetes clusters for Nirmata and also works with customers for issues with their Kubernetes deployments. Dolis is a certified Kubernetes administrator, certified Kubernetes administrator developer, and AWS Solution architect certified, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in computer science. Wow, well, a bunch of accolades there, amazing stuff. And without further ado, let's bring on Dolis.
Hi, everyone. That's me.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to your talk. Do you want to maybe talk the audience through real quick what you're going to be sharing and what you hope for them to get out of this?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about a little bit about what is cloud governance and what is IaC, and then I'll talk about how Crossplane and Kyverno can help us, and is in all of these can provide cloud governance with the help of policies. So yeah, and I have a quick demo, so maybe I can quickly show that what exactly I'm talking about, because before a demo, nobody understands what exactly it is.
Sounds amazing. Well, everyone who's watching, be sure to drop your questions in the chat so we can relay it over. And with that, I think we're going to let you take it over. So thank you so much for being here and really looking forward to your presentation.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, so I think I've already been introduced, but I'll quickly just talk about me, and then we'll talk about today's topic. So my name is Dolis Sharma, and I'm a customer success engineer in Nirmata. And today we're going to talk about cloud governance with infrastructure as a code, which is also called as IaC with Kyverno and Crossplane. And these are some of the agendas that I have on the screen that we are going to cover today. So we will start with what exactly is IaC, and then why do we need IaC with the current challenges that we see, and then how Crossplane and Kyverno can help address those challenges, or even why do we want to use that in the first place. Then I'll quickly give you a demo, and then we'll wrap up the session. So to start with, let's talk about what is IaC. So IaC is nothing but provisioning and managing an infrastructure through code. That means it's just codifying everything, and which looks good, which is great. But why do we need IaC? So with legacy systems, we have seen that administrators actually need to manually deploy and manage all the infrastructure along with their dependencies, which requires some amount of time, which requires resources, and then it requires special skills. Now, IaC, this entire concept or approach reduces all the time, and then all the time that we were doing things manually, it actually automates that. So now engineers don't have to do these things manually. They can only define the building blocks of the project, where IaC can actually framework this, and then it can do all the heavy lifting in order to create and shape the infrastructure the right way, which allows a faster time for the market. Now, this really states and is very clear that it increases the speed of deployment, but it also cancels out all the potential error when you're doing 10 things manually, clicking here and there. And then cost, it also reduces a lot of cost along with all of these. Now, not only that, but it also improves your consistency of infrastructure. We all know that there are configuration drift that we see often due to mismatch between dev and production. And these can be due to many reasons. This can be due to ad hoc changes or any updates. And later on, we realize that, oh, there is a rift that happened in our environment. So IaC can address all of these, and then it can improve these infrastructure consistency. It eliminates all these gaps. And once you have all your infrastructure set up in a form of code, this code is auditable, it's repeatable. This approach will help you to scale down or even scale up your environment. So think of a situation or a scenario where you want to scale down your dev and bring it up in an entire different region. IaC can help you do that. You have a code and you can just scale it to a number of in a number of region, or actually bring it up in just one click. So it gives you a good workflow transparency and a structural arrangement of actually provisioning your code, which is pretty awesome and sounds good. But what are the current challenges that we see today in IaC? So IaC current challenges are that there are some Security risk we see that are associated with IaC. Security risk like there can be misconfigurations, there can be data exposures, there can be access privilege that you are giving with the help of your code to the infrastructure or to the development. And then there can be compliance violations that which are not compliant according to your organization. Now, while the security team is looking to enable all of these check at different level, they don't have the entire visibility in a developer's code. Now, this becomes a really big challenge when you want to achieve this without bridging the DevOps and a SecOps gap. And this actually creates friction between the team. And then there is coding dependencies. We have so many tools out there which have different language they are written on. You have to look for people who know those skills. You have to build up a team, and then it creates an extra task of actually managing all of that. And then regardless of how consistent you want to make your infrastructure, there is always configuration drift, so you have to manually reconcile it, which can cause different kind of issues like a novel deadlock, or maybe you have to have a time window where you do this reconciliation manually and things like that. So these are some of the challenges that we see in IaC today, and how Crossplane can help you address this is, so Crossplane actually uses Kubernetes API, which means that the team can orchestrate all of their infrastructure and cloud using kubectl. So if you are using Kubernetes, or if the team is aware about kubectl, they can use the same kubectl CLI terminal using which they can provision their infrastructure. Using the same terminal, they can actually provision their infrastructure, and Crossplane can be implemented as a Kubernetes add-on. So now the cluster which is useful for your workload deployment can actually help to create and provision your infrastructure. So also Crossplane uses Kubernetes declarative fashion. So you don't have to do the manual reconciliation. You just tell Crossplane what you need, what is the desired state, and automatically reconcile that. So all the time windows, all the deadlock challenges is something that you can cancel out. And since all your configuration files are in a form of code, you can actually version control them. And once you start version controlling them, you can track them, you can manage them, you can restore it back to any potential change. Not only that, when you're troubleshooting or you're finding an issue, it becomes really easy when everything is version controlled, and you can actually roll back to the previous version whenever required. And since Crossplane uses standard YAML format to create infrastructure, you actually do not require any language to learn. And this can really be helpful if you want to provide provisioning of infrastructure as a self-service. So for example, a developer who is actually creating an application using the same YAML, something similar or a similar YAML can also be used to create an EC2 instance before he is actually deploying that application. So now this reduces all the dependencies between team, and now it can be actually used as a self-service model, which is awesome. But there are some of the security challenges that we talked about. There are challenges like, how do you make sure you have that perfect check? How do you make sure that they're not privileges that you're providing while you're creating an EC2 instance? Or how do you make sure that that particular infrastructure or the particular virtual machine is in a particular region, has all the check, has proper security groups, and all those settings that you do if you are provisioning the infrastructure? That's where Kyverno can help you have those checks enabled. A little bit about Kyverno. So Kyverno means govern in Greek language. It's a CNCF incubated project, and it is a Kubernetes admission controller. It is built for Kubernetes. So that means all the policies that you're deploying and all the application deployment which you're doing for Kyverno is all Kubernetes native. So writing a policy is a YAML file. It is as easy and as simple as you write or deploy a deployment file. And using Kyverno, you can validate, mutate, and you can generate Kubernetes resources. So how does it work is, you can actually write policies, and you can write policies to validate your configuration, and Kyverno can give you that checks according to that. Or else you can mutate the existing Kubernetes resources, or you can generate new resources. So you can provide all the triggers that Kyverno will check for, and it can generate new resources that will give you a whole lot scope of doing a lot of automations around. So, which is good. Kyverno does a lot of things. Crossplane helps you in infrastructure as a code model. But why do you use Crossplane and Kyverno? How to use it and why to use it in the first place? So Kyverno with Crossplane, why do you use it? So it actually addresses the IaC security risk that we talked about, which involves excessive privilege, which involves compliance violations. So what Kyverno does is it enforces the guardrails by deploying those policies. So now, even though you're providing Crossplane as a self-service, you have all the proper checks set up. You have the visibility, though enabling the self-service model, and then you know exactly the security posture of your cluster. So what Kyverno does is it scans all your deployment and then it provides a report for you that you can have an entire visibility of what are the vulnerabilities, what are the violations that are happening from in accordance with your validating policies or all the policies that you have created. It not only blocks or audit those, it also provides guidance to the developer. So if one of the YAML or if one of the resource has been blocked by Kyverno, it actually tells why exactly is blocked so that the developer gets a guidance. He can go back, he can fix his YAML and then come back and then deploy it again. And writing a policy in Kyverno is extremely easy. So if you know Kubernetes, if you know YAML syntax, you'll be able to write your own policy from day one. Kyverno also can mutate things and it can also generate things. So you can have cool and all those new use cases for automations in your infrastructure. And also Kyverno has a CLI that you can use in your CI/CD pipeline. So now think of it that you're using IaC in your pipeline, which is provisioning infrastructure, and then Kyverno CLI is using and validating all those infrastructure before it is even deploying into the cluster. So that's how you can use Kyverno with Crossplane. Now, enough of the talking. I'll just bring up my screen and I'll quickly show you how does it look and what exactly I'm talking about. Okay, so just checking a little bit of my... Okay, so I have a couple of YAML files over here. I have a one node kind cluster and I have Crossplane and Kyverno already deployed in this cluster. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what does an instance YAML file looks like. For taking a step back, how can you create a simple EC2 instance in Crossplane? So this is what a YAML looks like, and this is a simple instance YAML. And if you'll see, this is as a normal YAML, and you have all your settings configured over here. So you have your details of subnet, your image ID. You can add a lot of fields which are supported by Crossplane, and then creating a EC2 instances as simple as applying this YAML. So once this is applied, you will see that the instance will come up, and then you will see that it is created. Now, if you do kubectl get instance, you will see that the instance is coming up, and this is the ID that it gives you. Now, if I can check the ID in my AWS, which I'm doing on another screen, you will see that this instance will be coming up, and in some time it will be up and running. Now, in a similar way, you can also, just so I can show you, this is my instance and it is already started initializing. So in a similar way, you can also create S3 bucket, and I'm just going to delete this before. In a similar way, you can also create an S3 bucket, and the YAML for this is over here. So you'll see here that this is a bucket YAML looks like, and this is, I've specified my region over here. I've specified if you want to block public access and all the settings and all the configurations you do when you do it manually. When you create an S3 bucket, this is all possible by your YAML file. So you can add it everything over here, and you can version control it. You can put it in GitHub. You can share it. You can audit this, going back what were the settings I configured it initially. So all those things are possible when you start codifying all the things. So this is how creation of infrastructure is easy. Now, talking about the other side, how do you make sure that the privilege are on point? How do you make sure that this bucket which I'm creating is in a particular region? Or when we talk about cloud, it's all about cost and cost management. So how do you make sure that when you're creating an EC2 instance, the instance type is exactly small? Nobody is just bringing up a big instance and just creating it, and just, your cost is spiked suddenly. So how you can do is you can create a Kyverno policy, and you can have proper checks at your instance provisioning. And this is one of the policy I have. So I'm just I think I have it here already. So I'm going to show you this one. This is the policy I'm using. So this is a Kyverno policy, and these are some of the annotations which I have, the messages and just so that I know what is this policy doing. And then I have a validate. This is a validate policy, and I have it in enforce. If I change this enforce to audit, it's not going to block it, but it's going to audit it. So it will help you to know what exactly is happening in your cluster. And this is a rule. You can have a couple of them. So this is one of the rule that I'm adding over here. This rule is applicable to instance, and it's going to validate with this pattern. So this is my pattern, and it's saying that, okay, the YAML the instance resource should only have T3 medium. This is the pattern it's going to validate from. And if this is not T3 medium, it's going to block that, giving a message to the developer saying that this is not allowed, so that whoever is creating it knows why it is blocked in the first place. So let's see how it looks like. So I'm going to just create this policy first. I have Kyverno running over here. I have the entire setup, but I can show you how it looks. It's a single pod I'm running, and everything is, the entire setup is ready. So I'm going to deploy this policy, and if I see this policy is true, it's in enforce mode. Perfect. I'm just going to check if my instance is gone, which is, and I'm going to apply the instance YAML again, which I did when I was creating an instance. And the moment I do that, it tells me that it's denying that request. It's blocking this instance. You cannot create this instance. And the reason being is that my instance have a M1 medium, which my policy doesn't like, because I've clearly said that you should only use a T1 medium or T3 medium, something like that, which is not M1 medium, of course. So your instance type is wrong, and it tells you exactly, gives you a message that using any other instance type apart from this is not allowed. So I can go back, I can fix my YAML, apply it, and there you go. So yeah, this was a short demo or quick demo of what it looks like. Now I'm going to just go back and talk through the other set of things I wanted to cover. Okay, so I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Okay, so we covered a couple of things, and what are the key takeaways that that tells us that from the session, what are the summary or the key takeaways that we want to go away with? First is that we need IaC. IaC is wonderful. It's cool. It helps you to do a lot of wonderful and cool stuff, but it has some of the challenges, and it has some of the things that needs to be worked on. First is that using right tools like Crossplane will really help you. It will help you because it doesn't have any dependencies of any code. Anybody can learn it. The learning graph is really cool. You can provide it as a self-service, so that's pretty awesome. And then the other side of that is the security side. So using Kyverno, we can actually add those proper checks when you are creating an infrastructure, and you can provide the infrastructure provisioning as a self-service. So yeah, this was some of the things that I wanted to cover, short and sweet. If you want to know more about Kyverno, you can actually go in kyverno.io. We have more than, I don't know, like 200 policies now, and we have policies for every type, for every service of Kubernetes. You will see there, and we have a channel in CNCF and Kubernetes. So if you have anything, and we are quite active there, so if you have anything, if you have any questions, just put a message in the channel, and we should be there to help you out. Okay, so any questions if we have anything?
So first of all, amazing talk. I think we have a question just around what are some of the interesting production Kubernetes issues you've seen at your job? Because it sounds like you're working with lots of different clusters there. So what are some of the cool things you've run into?
So a lot of them, I think, it depends. I have run into a lot of security issues, and we have run into a lot of networking issues like, your worker group is not able to join your cluster because of the security groups. So yeah, a lot of issues that you think that it's a Kubernetes problem, but if you dig deeper, it's more towards your security issues or your networking issues, or more towards a Linux issue. So everything is related, I would say. It's just not Kubernetes sometimes.
I'm also really curious, by the way, if people are really interested in this and want to get more into Kubernetes and doing security for all this stuff, like, do you have any good resources you recommend people go, like either books or websites or blogs or people to follow on Twitter, anything like that?
Yeah, so I would say that we could, to know more about security and to know more about what Kubernetes security is, I usually started with understanding Kubernetes basic security and CIS benchmark, what exactly it talks about and what exactly are the standards. So that is something we should always have a look and something to keep in the back of our pocket. The other things is we should start understanding and thinking about security at day one. Often I've seen that once anybody is in production, after they are in production live, they start thinking about security, which is not good because you're already live. So something to start with at day one, and then you can start thinking about how to write a policies from day one, how to at least have best practices and PSP policies to start with, and then later on you can harden or you can make it more strict. But to start with PSPs and to start with best practices that day one is something that I would suggest. We can go in Kyverno.io, we can have a look at CIS benchmark and what all Kubernetes actually suggest in their own documentations.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. That was incredible. I learned a lot myself. So thank you for dropping some knowledge on me over here.
Same here. Same here. I'm not one that knows quite a bit about Kubernetes and all that space, but what you presented was understandable. And I particularly wanted to call out and mention that I like the developer experience was in mind, where I can turn on that audit mode, for instance, or just reporting kind of mode. And that way I can learn before I go any further beyond that. So thanks for pointing that out.
No problem.
Awesome.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.